Hello class, Spring Social Media at Queens College. This is MEDST 255. My name is Jamie Cohen and I'll be your instructor this semester, and I'm really looking forward to talking about social media. I mean, that's what this class is about. So today is our first lecture, so I really want to go over some of the things that we'll be covering in this class. But I want you to know that this is going to be a different semester, as I'm sure you're aware from last semester and the previous one, since the 2020s have literally been the longest decade of my life. And it's only been 1 year and like 3 months, or 1 month, or whatever it is, but it's been forever. So I just to put this out there, as I feel a compassion towards understanding that you're taking classes in Zoom school at this point, and we're going to be working remotely in this class. This is an asynchronous class, and we're going to be covering a lot over the course of the next 15 weeks. I'm really excited to be having this class with you, though, because this is my passion, this is my work, and this is what I really want to instill a lot of critical thinking in social media on you, so we could really basically own the future properly, rather than like let social media dictate how we do things. So this class is about gaining control. But just this year, you can see how much social media has a say in your life and our lives around us, and the things that we don't really recognize as how much happens because social media kind of dictates that reality. Just this year, just in 2021, we've already had Bean Dad, which happened just literally days before the anti-democracy insurrection. We've had sea shanties as this very strange and weird viral event. We've had Bernie memes that come directly from the day of the inauguration. And then we have had the GameStop, of course, this week, the GameStop memes, and the inflation of a meme stock to basically combat capitalistic structures. So it's very complicated. None of these things are easily explained. None of these things are like, okay, we get them because they just sort of make sense. Everything that I've just described, from Bean Dad to sea shanties to the insurrection to literally Pepe the Frog on the steps of the Capitol to Bernie memes to GameStop, all are nuanced. They all have very intricate ways of explaining them. They have ways of understanding them that takes a fluency, an internet fluency, that I think I'm going to help you try to gain during this semester, but also want you to know that it's not something that is the ultimate outcome. We're not going to be able to say, all right, by the end of the semester, we understand it collectively. What I need you to get from this semester is understanding social media as a construct and how it works, what platform capitalism is, how we market things on it, how we operate, and most specifically, I want to go over how we approach critical thinking with it, because it's going to help us gain what is most important to me, agency, the ability to control our futures and act civically or act open-mindedly. So first, of course, with any class, so let me introduce myself. I'm Jamie Cohen. I'll be your instructor for this semester, and I have a background in new media, but it's not truly a background in new media. That's a fairly new background that I gained. My background is actually in television. I was a television producer. I worked in television for a couple of years, quite some time ago at this point. And I associate produced a reality show, as well as produced a bunch of band stuff. Like, I don't know if any of you know it, Motion City Soundtrack. I traveled with them for quite some time shooting stuff, but that was like way back. But while I was shooting that reality show, I kind of got a sense of the fact that the world is shifting way faster than we ever could understand it. So I really wanted to understand how media intersects with culture. How do people present themselves to be an inauthentic person? How does somebody use the screen, the camera, to present themselves as a new identity? Since then, the social media, when I entered academia, when I went into grad school, it was at the very nascent and early days of Facebook. Facebook's biggest competitor at the time was MySpace. So that's basically when I started working on this. In 2006, I started a study on YouTube, and I started studying web series, and that was basically my entry into it. My master's is on web series and understanding how basically traditional media didn't really end and new media began. What I was arguing is that new media, web television, was really television, but on the web. It had basically taken old hegemonic structures, hegemony meaning the structural being of it, and moved them into a new and digital space. So as I went on, I was very fortunate to kind of experience these types of things in real time. And then later I founded a college degree. I am the founder of a new media degree at another college. And there's dozens of people that walk around with a degree I invented. And I actually recently left that institution. And now I'm working my way back into academia, but I'm doing a bunch of freelance and doing a lot of digital producing now. But in that meantime, I did my PhD. And so my doctorate is on cultural and media studies, and I focus most specifically on memes. So I'm technically a meme doctor. So that's really what I wanted to study. And I'm glad I studied it, because when I began my study, I wrote the very first peer-reviewed article on Pepe the Frog. So I really learned a lot about what it means to really understand digital culture. I premised the idea with my co-author that we read memes vertically in a media archaeological sense. And you'll learn a bit about media archaeology in this class, but it's not really the focus of it. But in other words, when we read a meme, we don't read it the way we read text left to right. We read it vertically. We read it by the image, the text, and then down to its references. We have to see how memes operate in a space, a cultural space. So that's a meta-textual space. So that was the work I've been doing for the last several years. And that led me to find new outcomes and new directions for my own personal growth. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm really excited to be teaching this. I've been teaching online courses now for almost a decade. Everybody teaches it differently. I have my own way. I'm going to do the way that I like doing it. And I really hope you like it. But if this is a collaborative experience. So if there's things that you like better or want to change or want to talk about or anything, you have to be in contact with me, because it's a really important thing that we have to learn together, because there's a lot to cover in this class. And learning via asynchronous learning, where you have to watch lectures and read things and then kind of respond to it, isn't exactly intuitive, but it is enough that you can have your own ownership of this content, so to speak. So all that said, I want to go over some of the things we're going to be doing in this class before we start. So this is the first lecture. So lectures look like this. They're basically me talking to you with this little box in front of me for about 20 minutes or so for each lecture. I record these weekly, and I record them weekly for the exact reason I was talking about at the beginning, is because something like GameStop can appear at any point. And if I don't make these weekly, then we lose sense of what social media is. This class is ever changing. The syllabus that you see on the site is a Google Doc, and I do that on purpose because I'll change the links quite often. Keep track of it. Obviously, I can't change the past. I could add links that you might want to use as references. But for the most part, everything that is in the future is subject to change, because the future is subject to change. So everything is kind of dynamic as we get through this class. That said, we still have our course goals. And the course goals are to really understand how social media operate as a media, as communication, as a connective device, as a motivator, as an identity source, as a piece of capital, as a place to profit, as a place to understand brands. All of these things are encapsulated on social media platforms. So we're going to be learning a lot about platform capitalism. How do these operate? What is data? How do data flows work? What are algorithms? Where are algorithms? How do algorithms work? We're going to be doing a lot of this stuff because there's a lot to learn. We're also going to learn a bit about the law, a little bit of the legal operations that happen with social media. So from Section 230 to the DCMA, some of the laws in which we use the internet were written in the late 1990s, and we're still using it in 2021, these same outdated laws. The gridlock and the bipartisan or nonpartisan bifurcated partisanship in the government really causes problems with us trying to refine these laws a lot, because we really need a collective understanding of how to operate the web, internet literacies, to really have a really strong conversation about how to change these things. I think the closest we see to some sort of regulation, which I'm not pro-regulation, just so we're all clear about that, one of the closest things we've seen to regulation is the GDPR in Europe, which I think is messy and a bit early for its time, but I think it's got the right sort of sense of how to protect users' identity. You'll understand a bit more about why we should be protecting identities as we go through the class, because it's your right to your future, so to speak. When we get to the point on Shoshana Zuboff's The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, you're going to see that the right to your future is basically based on your identity and you keeping it and not giving it directly to social media platforms. Sorry, I'm tilting my glasses because the ring light is reflecting in my eyes. these types of things are really important to kind of get. And I think that the most important thing you'll get from this class is understanding something that Nathan Jurgensen spoke about 5-6 years ago at this point, about digital dualism. There was once this belief that we had an online identity and we had a real life identity. And what I think we're going to realize as we go through this class is that they are the same, but they're different tools of expression. In other words, you are the same on the internet as you are in real life, but the tools of expression, whether it be speaking out loud or communicating via screens, is a tool of who you are. And so you express yourself differently, but you are still who you are underneath it. So one of the things about who you are is learning. Learning is about change. Learning is about growth. Learning is about becoming your future. And part of that is that social media is not going away. If anything, it's going to be more split up. It's going to be more increased. It's going to be more platformed. For those of you who are keeping up, there's been new platforms over the last year that have literally appeared and some have gone away. The main couple of big ones I think are the most problematic, to be honest with you, Facebook and Twitter. These platforms and Instagram and WhatsApp, all the Facebook downstreams, are problematic because their size, their extreme ownership over our communication. They sort of have this ability to control the flow of communication, but they're not utility. Utility being like your telephone, which is regulated, or your television set, which is regulated. Those are utilities at this point. Just the way that plumbing and electricity are utilities, there are communication utilities. But social media are not utilities. They are private platforms that control sort of how we move through space. And they're kind of unavoidable at this point. Well, some of us may not have all the social media, and by the end of this class, I won't blame you if you just leave them all. The idea of that is that we're slowly being funneled into a social media connected universe. And those types of things can be daunting unless we understand that we are still in control as the collective group. One of the big takeaways, I think, of the GameStop event of the last few days, which you'll read a little bit more about in the newsletter, is that I think what it does is it proves a collective action. It proves that together people can change things. Whether that's good or bad, that's honestly subjective, depending on who you are and where you align. But I think what's interesting is that collective action is something that social media can actually bolster. People could use it to do certain things. And that goes all the way from BLM to social justice movements to literally any type of mass gathering. These types of things can be collectivized on there. It could also lead to very, very bad things. QAnon is a result of social media. It probably would not exist without social media. And so conspiracy theories and misinformation flourish. Flourish. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, well, they're flourishing in terms of like spread. I mean them as the way that vines would grow. They flourish so much. When the sun, which is the voice, becomes out there, they wrap around things and get their tendrils into parts. Those are the bad sides of social media, because what's the limits of free speech? We're going to learn a bit about our civic rights in this class. What's your amendments? What rights do you have? What are the terms of service? What do the terms of service mean when they interact with your civic rights? There's a lot to understand. I think you're going to get a lot out of this, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with the class. So it's going to be a lot to go over. So like I said, this is the first lecture, so it's pretty much an overview. There's no real lesson to be learned from this one, aside from understanding how the class is going to operate. So let me go over some of those things. So first, we have a Blackboard. Oh, the dreaded Blackboard. I'm not a big fan of Blackboard, but it is what our tool is. It is a place where you're going to hand in your assignments. It's going to be the place where you interact with your discussions, and it's going to be the place where you find the announcements. The announcements are usually going to contain the link to the Substack. The Substack is going to contain, well, this lecture and a link to this lecture, of course. And it's also going to contain a lot more color than the lectures will do. So it's going to have the links to the articles that I referenced. It's going to have the links to the homework assignments. It's going to basically be your weekly, in your inbox information about the class and how you could get through this semester really well and successfully. So one of the things I need you to do first is to subscribe to that Substack, which is basically your in your inbox newsletter that contains this lecture and everything else. Once you're in there, you're going to see the assignments. The assignments are always embedded in this lecture. Okay, so no matter what, every week You have to watch these lectures because they contain the information for how to be successful through the class. So let me lay out how to be successful in this class. Unfortunately, there's grades. That's how college works. So there's ways of getting through this class with good grades, and there's ways of getting through this class, as a mediocre, you were just sort of existing and you didn't stop existing, which is really good. And honestly, that is good. It's tough. This is a tough time. We're literally in a pandemic. It's unprecedented. And it's important for you to stay strong and healthy beyond all this. So I am going to be looking out for that. One of my first concerns, of course, is your safety and wellness above all. So you do have to understand that if you fall behind, you should make sure you contact me. Okay, so let me lay out some rules. One, the way to get through this class exceptionally is to interact, is to talk, to make sure you hand in all your homework on time, is to make sure that you are on top of everything as it goes. Second, you get a B, that's like an A. B is like when you're there, you're doing the work, you've submitted everything, you've done it on time, but you're just kind of like passing through. That's totally fine. That's totally great. C is when you're late on a lot of things. You have 2 weeks past any deadline to get anything in. After 2 weeks, it reaches 0. So you really don't want to do that. So that's like a bad step. You don't want to end up in that space. So that's a C. And then D and below is really when I recognize that you're not really attempting anything. Occasionally I'll reach out to you if that's the case, but you really don't want to end up less than that. It's really, as long as you participate, you'll make it through this semester fairly well. And then this will be a little bit more clear in the following lectures. But I first and foremost, like I said, I want to make sure you're staying well and healthy. So please be open to communicating with me. Use my Gmail to connect with me, all right? That's my main means of communication. I hate my QC mail. Please use my Gmail, jamesncohen@gmail.com, to communicate. My Zoom office hours are weekly on Thursdays. They are open office hours, so I will open a Zoom. You can attend it at any point. The link is inside the Blackboard, so you can come in and just talk, hang out, talk about memes, talk about culture, talk about your homework. You can do whatever you want. That's your time as a student. Otherwise, you could always email me and we could set up a Zoom meeting. This is an asynchronous course. That means everything is downloadable. It means you have to actually watch the videos. It means a lot of the onus is on you to participate. It means that it's your job to make this class work for you. So, all this being said, it's 15 weeks we've got ahead of us. There's a lot to cover in this class. Your first assignment is to watch the documentary Generation Like with Douglas Rushkoff, which is still one of my favorite films. At this point, I would say it's a bit outdated because it's almost a decade old at this point, but I think its message is really strong. Our first discussion is a little bit about that. You'll find the discussion on the discussion board. It's that awkward introduce yourself. And then I'd like to just have a little acknowledgement of the idea of what you thought of the film and what you think of your favorite social media. It's an awkward first assignment. From next week, we'll go into memes. It's not unlocked yet, but we'll start jumping right in. Go right in the deep end right from the beginning. So if you have any questions, please email me, of course, and stay tuned for your first Substack. Make sure you subscribe as soon as possible, though, because otherwise you're going to have to retrieve all this information from the Blackboard. By subscribing to the Substack, it comes directly to your inbox. So make sure you've made that easy for yourself. Okay, lots to do this semester. Lots of fun we're going to have. Make sure you stay warm through the winter and try to stay healthy and well. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you. On many lectures, I will use your assignments in the videos. So that is a good way of making sure that you are participating. When you send something in, when it's an assignment, I will try to make those things appear on the screen. So if some of the memes might be funny, some of your assignments might be good, and I'll reference you. By the end of the semester, that's a good way to know that you're part of this, is that you hear yourself on the screen. It's a good way to know that the feedback loop is working, because otherwise it feels kind of cold. So I try to warm that up with the interactive experience of this camera. Till next time, good luck, and looking forward to seeing your introduction discussion on the discussion boards. And be well, be safe, and talk to you soon.